Greetings viewers, my name is Eric Rodriguez. I would usually address you as the Blockbuster Buster, but I think it's important that everybody that sees this video understands that I'm not joking around, that I'm not channeling the voice of my internet persona, and that I'm being 100% honest about what I'm about to say. If you're a fan of the Man of Steel, I will warn you ahead of time that this video will not be very kind to that film. So if you can't handle harsh words about the cinematic folly, then I encourage you to stop this video and view some of the work of my fellow personalities from Channel Awesome. For those of you who are my loyal viewers, I apologize ahead of time, since this video won't be my usual light-hearted, humorous, high-energy fare, as this film does not put me in the mood to tell jokes or invest large amounts of energy when discussing it. It is also not my intent to nitpick at the film and complain about some of its more trivial elements, like the constant use of handheld cameras or the many pretentious Jesus Christ metaphors. Instead, I will concentrate on the 7 things that bother me the most and prevent me from enjoying this film. Now, some of you may want to refer to my initial thoughts video and say that I had already proclaimed that this film was okay. Just okay. Well, just okay is not a very positive adjective to use when describing something. And I will remind you that that was just my first impression after I had just watched the film. I have watched the movie several times after that video, and with every continued viewing, I find myself liking the film less and less. With that said, I have not changed my mind about the elements of this film that I did enjoy. The production design by Alex McDowell is superb. The costumes, props, and sets look incredible, and I would very much love to see Mr. McDowell work on more comic book films. And I also still like the opening of this film. It's fantastic. They did a great job of portraying the struggle and sacrifice that Jor-El and Lara had to endure as their planet neared its end and they had to give up their only child. Unfortunately, as I said before, nothing as good or better than this opening sequence ever occurs in the rest of the film. And when you open the movie with your best scene, there is nowhere left to go but down. And now to move on to my issues with this movie, starting with the action sequences. While it might sound petty to complain about the action sequences in a fantasy film, please keep in mind that this is an action movie, and the action sequences are a key factor. My issue here is that the film was directed by Zack Snyder, someone who is known for showcasing his action sequences with explicit detail. Here, we have action sequences that just move way too fast, making it hard to enjoy or process what you just saw. Plus, there are a lot of moments where the live-action characters change into CG characters in the middle of a shot, which I find very distracting. While I admit that this is way better than Batman Begins, where you couldn't tell what the hell was going on at all, I don't think that it would have hurt them to slow down a bit, get more wide shots, and really showcase in detail what these otherworldly characters can do. The interchangeable characters. Superman has been around for 75 years. That's 75 years of history, 75 years of character development, and establishing these distinct characters' voices, personalities, and traits. So I find it especially irritating that the characters in this film are so bland, generic, and interchangeable. They have no further traits outside of their initial character archetypes: hero, bad guy, girlfriend, boss, soldier, scientist. Guys, this is writing 101. Each character should have their own unique, distinct voice that cannot be confused for any other character. Which brings me to the most infuriating violation of this standard screenwriting rule: Lois Lane. Lois, from the beginning, has been portrayed as a tough, self-reliant, overly opinionated, intrepid reporter.
Daddy was a black belt.
You're an unusual woman, Lois.
Who has a knack for getting into dangerous situations. And the fact that all the near-death experiences never dissuade her from doing her job and facing more danger speaks volumes about her perseverance, determination, and courage.
I'm here from Washington. Security clearance Alpha. That's one plus of having a father in the Pentagon.
That was not the character in this movie. The Lois Lane in this film was so monotone and uninteresting that I found myself wondering if that was truly the great Amy Adams playing her. Watching this great iconic character be reduced to a bland, boring exposition facilitation tool was just depressing, and it made me wonder why they even bothered to get Amy Adams to play her, if they were not going to utilize her talents to their full extent. Which brings me to my next big question. Why was Lois Lane in this movie? I used to openly complain about the inclusion of Black Widow in Iron Man 2, but quite frankly, that character didn't feel nearly as tacked on as Lois Lane does in this film. Think about it for a second. You could literally edit her out of the movie and it wouldn't make one bit of a difference. It truly feels like they wrote the script without her and then decided to add her in last minute. This becomes even more evident with all the scenes where they include her for no good reason. For example, Superman gives himself up to the military, and the military allows her to interview him. Why? Zod's men arrive to collect Superman, and then they ask for Lois to come along as well.
General Zod would like this woman to accompany me.
Why? They got what they wanted. What are they bringing her along for? There are a lot of theories for this scene as to why they brought her along, but the fact of the matter is that they are just theories. In the end, the movie doesn't explain why. She's just there for the hell of it. Then, finally, at the end, when the heroes formulate a plan to stop Zod, the military brings her along on the mission. Again, why? Because she was the only one that knew how to operate the Phantom Zone projector? Well, according to the movie, all it takes to operate the Phantom Zone projector is to insert the activation module and then press it down. Are you honestly telling me that they needed her to do that? That there was no way they could have taught that to somebody else? And to make matters worse, she isn't even the one who activates the projector. Professor Hamilton does. So again, I decree that this character serves no practical purpose in the narrative. Some might want to argue that she's there because she's the romantic interest. Which leads me to my next big issue. Superman and Lois have no chemistry. This is one of the key factors of the Superman mythos, how these two characters are so different and yet they fit in perfectly with one another. Their relationship in this film is so awkward and forced, I cannot in good conscience point at any moment between them and say that it strengthened, furthered, or developed their relationship. There is just no true emotional connection between these two. I mean, come on, when the Thor movie presents a better romantic relationship than this film, you know you have a big problem. And in the end, they kiss. Even though they just met about a day ago, they kiss passionately, like they've been holding it back for years. In the animated series, Superman and Lois don't kiss until the final episode. The build-up was excellent. They more than earned that kiss. Here, there is no build-up. They didn't earn anything. They just kissed because it said so in the script. Violations of their own rules. Probably the biggest mistake a writer can make is to establish rules in their story and then carelessly break them. This happens repeatedly in this film. There are two big examples of this, the first one being Superman's secret identity. The dual identity is tossed right out the window before the first act is even over, as Lois does a bit of legwork and pretty much figures out who Superman is on her own. And the movie establishes that there are plenty of people in Smallville that know as well, and so does the military.
I grew up in Kansas, General. About as American as it gets.
I respect this. It was a bold choice. But then they ridiculously go back on the initial concept that they spent the entire movie building by having Superman don the tie-in glasses of Clark Kent at the end of the movie. Even though over half the characters in the film have already seen him use his powers in his civilian identity. This is incredibly dumb. And secondly, we have the establishing of how difficult it is to control Superman's powers. It literally takes Clark almost 33 years to really get them under control. And it takes him several tries to truly master flying. Zod and the rest of the Kryptonians show up and they're automatic experts at moving at super speed and managing super strength. Okay, that's not what was established in the first act and a half, but Superman needs villains, so I somewhat understand the negligence in the storytelling. The film then further establishes that the Kryptonians can be defeated if you destroy or remove their helmets, which stops them from filtering just how much solar radiation they are absorbing, and furthermore, stops them from controlling their powers. And then, suddenly, at the end, for no good reason at all, other than the third act needing one more fight scene, Zod can suddenly control his powers outside of his armor. And yes, he does give a reason for this, in the form of a very, very, very lazy throwaway line.
Trained my entire life to master my senses. Where did you train?
But like I said, this is not a good reason. Jonathan Kent. There is something about this character that is just completely fucked. First of all, was Kevin Costner truly the best choice for this part? Cause when I think of a warm father figure, Kevin Costner is definitely not the first actor that springs to mind. His son has this great power, which he consciously wants to use to help others, and Jonathan is constantly discouraging him from doing so. Why? I get that he is trying to protect his son from those who might fear him, but wouldn't it be more practical to teach his son how to cover his tracks and hide his actions from others? The kid is faster than a speeding bullet, you know. And then there's the bad line heard around the world.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
Maybe? What do you mean, maybe? There is no maybe. How dare anyone say that to a child? As if there was an option between right or wrong. Letting someone, anyone die is never the right thing to do. I find it difficult to believe that someone wrote this line into a script and thought it was okay. The producers read this and approved it. That the actor learned it and thought it was okay to say it aloud. Cause this is the most anti-Superman line I have ever heard, and it sure as hell doesn't belong in a Superman movie. The collateral damage. Now, I've been a comic book fan most of my life. Collateral damage is commonplace in these kind of stories, but the amount of collateral damage in this film just seemed unnecessarily ostentatious, cartoony, laughable, and completely out of tone with this relentlessly serious film. Hell, I can honestly say that even Michael Bay is more conservative with the amount of collateral damage in his movies. Yes, you heard me right. I actually gave Michael Bay a compliment. Now, it doesn't bother me as much when the collateral damage is being caused by the villains. They don't care who they hurt, so I get it. What bothers me is the ridiculous amount of collateral damage caused by Superman. First, we have his idiotic fighting strategy of pushing bad guys into crowded buildings. Why would he do this? You know how many people he must have killed doing this? In the film, he only directly saves 3 people. His mom, a soldier, and Lois. So for every 1 person that he saves, he approximately kills 50. That, my friends, is not a good ratio. There is even a scene where he cripples Zod's ship and crashes it into a populated area. Superman would never be this reckless.
Next time, double check for collateral damage.
One of his recurring fighting techniques is to lead the bad guys away from populated areas and then fight. This Superman doesn't seem to give a crap who gets hurt in the crossfire. Then again, I'm not surprised judging by the person who raised him.
Maybe.
And now it's time to talk about the most quote-unquote controversial scene in the movie. Be warned, if you haven't seen this film, I am about to spoil the ending. For those of you that are sick and tired of people complaining about this scene, know that I will never grow tired of hearing people complain about it, as I believe that more people should. And of course, I'm talking about the murder. I get that sometimes heroes have to make difficult decisions, and taking lives is one of them. This scene would have been fine if it would have featured any other character except for Superman. What sets Superman apart, the reason he's the best, the one that other superheroes try to emulate, it's not his powers, as plenty of other superheroes pretty much have the same abilities, and they still don't measure up to the Man of Steel. The answer is a combination of 2 things. Number 1, how he uses his powers. As the movie so efficiently established, Superman's powers are hard to control. It takes a great deal of dedication and discipline to keep them in check. Superman is the best not because he has the ability to apply great force, but because he knows just how much force to apply. And number 2, he is the best because he has all these great powers and still behaves with the utmost dignity and decorum.
Even so, I can't fight him, Satya.
You must. You're the only one powerful enough.
If I do, your planet will be the loser.
A battle between us would cause more destruction and bloodshed than all the wars that came before.
The Superman in this film is careless and reckless and willing to stoop to the villain's level to win a fight.
There's only one way this ends, Cal. Either you die, or I do.
Superman would never end a fight on the villain's terms, with the very, 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 very minor exception of Darkseid.
Don't, Clark.
Kara!
You fight by Darkseid's rules, you're gonna kill somebody. And it won't be him.
Who is the only villain who knows just how to get under Superman's skin and bring him down to his lowest. That did not happen in this film. Zod tries to kill a group of people with his heat vision, and Superman's solution is to kill him? He's Superman. He could have put his hand over Zod's eyes and blocked the heat vision. He could have flown him up out of the building. He could have frozen him with his ice breath. But he just murders him instead. And you want to know what bothers me the most about this? That people seem to be okay with it. Superman is one of our last truly good, pure icons. And it is just shameful that there are people who are not bothered by this film tarnishing that. The most popular defense of this horrible scene is that Superman allegedly kills Zod every time that they fight. This is not true. Superman only attempted to kill Zod once using kryptonite, and he did it as a final resort after exhausting all other options. And guess what? Zod returned after this, so technically speaking, he didn't really kill him. People like to point at Superman 2 and say that he killed Zod in that film. Well, in the script, the TV version, and the Donner cut, he didn't. One can see the Arctic police taking the Kryptonian villains away after Superman takes away their powers. Why exactly did they cut this from the theatrical version is beyond me. Point is, the very, very, very few times that Superman has killed, it has always been under extreme circumstances. This was not an extreme circumstance, at least not for Superman. And just to pour salt on the wound, there are no repercussions for him doing this. Zod is dead and everything is fine. I just can't accept this, not for Superman, a character that values life so much, even the lives of his enemies.
This ends now.
I had no choice.
They weren't truly alive. No blood, no minds. You did what you had to do.
The entire animated film Superman vs. the Elite is about Superman's stance of not abusing his powers and his unwillingness to kill his enemies no matter how tempting it might be.
You had the power to end Atomic Skull's criminal career right there, permanently. Why didn't you?
I'm not anyone's judge and jury, Professor Baxter. Definitely not an executioner. My powers don't put me above the law.
Zack Snyder has been drilled repeatedly about his decision to include this scene in the film. His response is that there had to be something in the film that explained why Superman doesn't kill. What kind of sense does that make? Since when do I have to kill another human being to know that killing is wrong? So now, thanks to Zack Snyder, we will have a whole generation of children who will believe that the last true good guy is a killer. I have seen plenty of films that bothered me or angered me, but this is the first film I have ever seen that just depressed me. If these are the building blocks of the upcoming DC Comics movie franchise, then I want no part of it. I have loyally followed DC Comics since I was 7 years old. Most of my life I have patiently waited for a film that represented these characters accurately, and I am yet to see that film. So no, I'm not looking forward to Superman vs. Batman, or the eventual Justice League film. In fact, there is a high probability that the next time you see me review a DC film, I might be busting it. At this point in the video is when I would usually rank the movie, but I'm not going to do that. A film that drags one of the very few truly great American icons through the mud and turns him into a reckless, careless killer doesn't deserve my energy or a ranking. So no points in the bad attitude meter, no busting, no clever line. All this film will ever get from me is the hope of not having to talk about it at length ever again. And the hope of never ever ever again having to waste precious minutes of my life watching it.
You're living in a dream world!
Good. Dreams save us. Dreams lift us up and transform us into something better. And on my soul, I swear that until my dream of a world where dignity, honor, and justice are the reality we all share, I'll never stop fighting. Ever.